Less than 24 hours ago, you and your family were strolling the campground, having a kid-favorite dinner, walking tacos.
Like a bag of like Fritos or Doritos, and you just put all the stuff in the bag and you shake it up, and then the kids eat it. So it's like a contained mess.
Taco dinner is a favorite for all three of your young daughters, Josephine, Charlotte, and Evelyn. Their camping version is no exception.
They loved them. They thought it was so cool. We had a huge spread, and of course they're making a huge mess, but it's good because you're camping. So Have a great time.
But now, all that fun you were having seems light years away. Now, you're living every parent's worst nightmare.
It's like your brain is literally on fire. I'm trying to talk to the police and I'm screaming for Charlotte. Not having your child is such a suffocating and heavy feeling. It's like you're drowning on land. You're just thinking on loop, like, where's Charlotte? Where's Charlotte? I need Charlotte. I need Charlotte. And it's like you can't intake. Like you can't take anything in.
Charlotte, the one you call Bug, your middle girl, only 9 years old, is missing. She'd taken a little bike ride, and her bike has been left alone. She's nowhere to be found. Less than 1% of missing children cases in the U.S. are stranger abductions. Charlotte did not ask to be in that number. But what this particular stranger did not know was that he messed with the wrong girl, and he messed with the wrong family. Today on the Gratitudeology Podcast.
Will you walk through the fire? Would you ride through the storm? Will you walk on a wire? Will you save me if I fall? Will you break through the madness? Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right here waiting till you find me again.
Trisha Sena and her husband Dave live in upstate New York.
I have a very quiet life. I work for a very well-known in upstate New York convenience store chain as like one of the number one employers in upstate New York. And my job is to actually teach and train our partners. I do a lot of talking. I get to know them. I get to know about their dogs and their kids and, little pieces of who they are, because my job is to get them to be motivated to do better. So I really need to create relationships with literally everybody because I want them to be happy to see me when I come in. And then my most important job is being a mom. Mom's my favorite job, my hardest job, my scariest job, but my kids are my priority.
The oldest kid, Josie, is 11. She's athletic and competitive, a performer. Trisha says she's the spicy one, whereas 5-year-old Evelyn, the youngest, runs the house. She's spunky and independent. In the middle is Charlotte.
And though all my girls are smart, Charlotte is incredibly smart. She's my kid that wants to just read a book. Though she plays softball with Josie, they're both on a rec team and a travel team, she just wants to read books. She loves graphic novels. She loves this Warriors series. She read it last summer. I was so impressed with her. It was 700 pages. And I'd go into her room. I'm still reading that book? She's like, yeah, I'm going to finish it before I go back to school, which she did.
How do the three of them get on together? Depends on the day?
Story, yeah. Depends on the day. I mean, Josie and Charlotte are 17 months apart. So they, fight about the normal things. Don't take my clothes. That's my friend, not your friend. Stop sending so many messages in the group text. And then Evelyn, she's 5 and they're not. And she wants to be all up in their business, and they do not want her up in their business. So it's just a really fun and trying dynamic in my house at any moment.
Regular sister stuff. For the Sena family, sometimes it's nice to take all of that stuff into the great outdoors.
I had said to another family that we camp with, we call them our family. Our kids grew up together. They're about the same ages. They have 2, we have 3, 5 girls. So they're all girls. And I'm like, why don't we take them fall camping? Because we go camping in Cape Cod, and it's always hot. And I'm like, fall camping is the best because you can wear sweatshirts and sit by the fire. I'm like, it'll be really fun for the kids.
So that September Friday in 2023, the 2 families packed up and headed to Moreau Lake State Park. It's 6,200 acres, includes a lake and a beach, playgrounds, fishing, pavilions for picnics, hiking trails, and more, surrounded by rocky ridges and hardwood forests. It's nearby. They'd been there before, even taken family photos there, which were still hanging on their walls.
So we got there Friday night, set up our tent. We were in a tent. Our other friend was in a tent. And then the family with the children were in a camper. And we set up everything. They had walking tacos. And then a tree had fallen in the back of our campsite, obviously prior to us getting there. But it was we called it nature's teeter-totter. So the way it fell, the kids could play on it. So they just played on that forever. And then they sat by the fire and we went to bed.
Saturday, the group dispersed. Dave took his older daughters to softball practice, and one of the friends had a birthday party while Trisha and the rest hung back. They'd all meet up back at Moreau to go fishing.
They had been waiting to go fishing forever. So we all hopped in the back of the truck, which I love doing that with my kids. When I grew up, riding in the back of the truck, you thought you were so cool.
Yeah.
And my dad would do it in the campgrounds. You all piled in the back of the truck. And so we all got in the back of the truck and we took them down. And so we fished and whatnot. And then nobody caught anything. The kiddos were getting restless. We needed to eat. It was getting a little later in the day. So they all piled back in the truck. And it's unfortunate that such a, what I think is a special memory is now tainted, but they had a singing contest on the way back to the campsite. And Josie is a performer. She wants everybody to look at her dancing, singing, telling jokes. She just has a really big personality. Charlotte's the opposite. Don't look at me. I'm not dancing and I'm not singing. I'm just back up type of kid, but she sang her little heart out, and I am such a marshmallow. The whole time she's singing, my chin is quivering and my eyes are starting to water because was just really proud of her for doing something so out of her comfort zone, and singing this song. And the person I was with in the back of the car had said to me, we got to tell Charlotte she won because she did so good because it was competition. And she just has such a sweet little voice that I don't always get to hear. So it was it really threw us all back in the car. But we never got to tell her.
They were back with plenty of daylight left to enjoy bike rides around the 5-minute loop before dinner. It had been a lovely, normal day. The only thing out of the ordinary were the blooms of blue-green algae in the water that can be dangerous.
So, of course, me, I'm stay out of the water, stay out of the water. I'm freaking out the whole time. Which, of course, nobody did. Because they're kids and they don't care.
Trisha is experienced in the outdoors, so she knew to get the kids washed up after playing in the water. In fact, she has safeguards in place for all kinds of scenarios.
So I took my littlest one down to the bathroom, and the other 4 stayed at the campsite with the other 4 adults. I saw the kids that they were getting ready to go on the bikes. My rule is to you need to have a partner. And it's not because like my mind always went to like, what if something happens? What if somebody takes you? But it's more so like if you fall, you get hurt, like and they didn't have phones at the time. So it was like, we need to have somebody that can come back and say like, you need to go here. Somebody fell, chain fell off, whatever, you know? So our rule is 2 at a time. So, you know, as they're leaving, it's like, just wear your helmet 2 at a time, you know, and I go down with Evelyn. I wash her up. And I get her back up and like get her back up to the campsite and I count our kids.
It's an automatic reflex for Trisha, like it is for so many parents. You never have a reason to think the count will be off, but you make sure anyway.
So I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And, you know, they pick on me because I will sometimes do it out loud. But it's like, I just need to do that so I know like everybody's accounted for. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. Where's Charlotte? Because I counted the kids like the second I got back and I said, where's Charlotte? And at first they were like, oh, she's on the teeter-totter. And I said, no, she's not. And then somebody else spoke up and said, I think she took her bike around one more time. So then I was very mad and I said, every one of you know the rule and you still let her go on her bike by herself. So I was not only mad that Charlotte took her bike by herself, but I was mad at everybody else that let her take her bike when they know the rule is that they go 2 at a time. So I grumbled a few things under my breath and took Evelyn into the tent to change her clothes.
The moment Trisha came back out of the tent, her anger turned to panic.
It was immediate. I knew something was going on because my husband wasn't at the site and one of our friends was no longer at the site and the kids were just like, it was like no noise on the campsite. It's like the only way I can describe it. It was just like so quiet. And I was like, where's Charlotte? And one of the people we were with said, sorry. We found her bike, but we don't know where Charlotte is. And I just completely panicked and called 911 like immediately. I'm trying to talk to the police and I'm screaming for Charlotte, which I know is not the right thing to do now. But like, you're so panicked, like the police are trying to talk to me and I'm just like not answering them. And I'm screaming Charlotte's name. Like she's going to just appear if I keep screaming her name. Where's Charlotte? Where's Charlotte? I need Charlotte. I need Charlotte. And then like people around us, it just kind of was like our entire loop were like calling her name and, you know, which was so overwhelming to hear like a symphony of your daughter's name, like just everybody at one time, like screaming her name. It was awful. Mm-hmm. It was just really awful.
At first, Trisha held on to hope that Charlotte might be nearby.
I kept saying to myself and saying to the cops, you know, Charlotte loves little critters. Maybe she saw something and went into the woods. Because that's what you want to think. It was like holding on to try to find like an innocent answer, almost like I said, like maybe she saw a snake and she hopped off her bike and went into the woods and just got turned around. And, you know, so it was almost trying to like, it's not that bad. Like, we're going to get her. She just took a wrong turn. And, you know, now looking back, it's very naive, but I think it's like a safety mechanism. Like it's what your brain does to keep you from totally just cracking, is like you're trying to find an innocent answer or explanation for what's going on. And that whole night I like really held on to that. Maybe she just took a wrong turn and she's scared in the woods, to the point of like I was like sitting in the woods in the dark, like just trying to listen, like I don't know, you become so like, it's almost like irrational. Like, now looking back, it's like, of course she wasn't 20 feet from me in the wood, but you're hanging on to anything that will ease it a little bit. Like, if I'm just quiet enough, I'll hear her like calling for me or something.
The search for Charlotte continued throughout the night.
The state police had like their German shepherds and whatnot that were looking and were trying to track her scent, but they brought the bloodhounds down. And a turning point for me was acknowledging that they were not finding Charlotte's scent. Like, that was when I really changed from like, I gotta stop pretending that she's just in the woods, because she is not.
Meanwhile, Trisha had been trying to reach her nearest relative, her mother-in-law, to come get the other two kids, but she wasn't answering her phone. So Trisha called her husband's brother, Pat, a firefighter, about 45 minutes south of Moreau. Pat immediately updated his wife, Jené.
And he's like, Trisha just called me. She's hysterical. Charlotte is missing. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you mean? And my husband was like, I'm going there. Get me all the flashlights. Get me the lantern.
Trisha and Jené are as close as can be, and also complete opposites. Jené Luciani is a leading bra expert and author of the Bra Book. Yes, really. And has a ton of experience working in media.
So I have tons of friends that are producers for media outlets and newspapers and everything. So I share this and I say, this is our niece, like anybody who's in the area. I go on the Ring camera app and I'm doing my like investigative reporting thing. I'm like, they're covered. They're searching in the park. If she's in the park, they'll find her. Let me see what I can do outside of the park. Pat had called me at one point and told me her bike was found standing like on its kickstand and her helmet wasn't there. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, sounds like she got in a car. So let me see if neighboring houses have Ring cameras. So I go on the Ring camera app and now everybody's like sharing it on the Ring camera app and responding to my message.
Jené also went on TikTok. But the next morning, on her drive to the campground, the major news outlets are calling her.
Everybody pretty much had my number because of the fact that I work for some of these TV outlets. They got my number very easily. So I'm like, okay, I guess like unofficial, media spokesperson at this point. So now it's like really picking up steam. So then my purpose became shielding them from the media outlets because they were starting to get Trisha's number somehow. And I reach out to Nancy Grace because I'm like, if anybody can find this child and like have the best experts, it's Nancy Grace. So right away, she puts me on her podcast. And one of her experts said, this is not a trafficking or a sophisticated crime.
I would be more inclined to think that someone passing in a vehicle opportunistically snatched her and left the park, but that it would be somebody familiar with the area and wouldn't have taken her very far out of the park.
I'm dealing with that aspect of things at the same time, trying to like make sure Trisha's okay and like she's trying to make her eat, which of course she's like not. Just doing the things that sisters-in-law do.
The governor holds a press conference in the park. An Amber Alert is issued, then corrected. It's all over broadcast media and social media. All resources have been deployed, and people everywhere are looking and praying for Charlotte. And yet, it also kind of feels like nothing is happening.
Nobody left. Everybody just sat up staring at a fire because you don't know what to do. Like, your mind is so like, it's like vibrating.
Yes.
I was just walking around wringing my hands for basically 47 hours, just aimlessly walking around.
I talked to the detective. It was very disheartening because he was like, listen, we have no leads. And I'm like, come on, like you have to. And he's like, grasping at straws, like, is there anyone you can think of that might have something to do with it? Is there any blah, blah, blah? And we're like racking our brains. I'm talking to psychics.
And they had never said to me that they had nothing. That's actually the first time I'm hearing that.
Really?
That they had acknowledged, like, we really just don't have any
It was very
leads.
disheartening because I was like, this has been all night. The dogs were here. And to say, like, we have no leads is, like, so discouraging.
Well, I would imagine that they told you and not me because
yes, because
I probably would have handled that a little differently than you will to have,
Well, so I got a detective.
People say they don't know.
I went and got my own detective basically to get on it too. And he works for one of the missing organizations. So he happens to specialize in that. So now he's on the case. And now I'm going up to the state police and saying, we had a guy that was a potential suspect. He actually lived very close to the area. He was a registered sex offender in a different state and all this stuff like that. So now the searchers are going to like this guy's house, and at the same time I'm telling the police, and they're like, we need this guy's name and stuff like that. And they were really cool. Like, they didn't feel like any toes were being stepped on because I was like, I'm just literally trying to do anything possible to help. And they talked to him. Turns out this guy had already moved away. So that was like a dead end. And I understand the police now, by this point, their phones are ringing off the hooks and they're totally overwhelmed, where the public information officer is like not even returning my texts anymore. So I'm calling my cousin who's a state trooper, and he's like, you just have to back off. And I'm like, no one's helping me.
Another night of pacing, hand-wringing, feeling helpless. At 4:20 a.m., Trisha and Dave, Jené and Pat, and the family advocate stood staring at the fire, not knowing that at the same time, a black truck was pulling up to a house with an American flag in front of it to put something in the mailbox, not paying any mind to the ring camera or the trooper stationed there at the Sena family home. It would be several more hours until Trisha knew about this development.
Two detectives come and they say, we need to take you and your husband to come to the barracks to come and talk to us. So I'm like, okay. But they have us go in separate cars. They took our phones. So I'm immediately like, what is going on? So, and mind you, we haven't slept. Like, Dave slept on a bench or something like that for like 40 minutes. And I went home and took a shower to see the kids and slept in a chair sitting up for 30 minutes and then was like, I got to get back.
Right.
So they take us separate. And I'm like, what is this all about? And at this point now, it's like, you've talked to these people so much. There's no smoke and mirrors. I'm just like, what are we doing? And they're like, no, we just got to ask you some questions and whatnot. So I said, oh, okay, whatever you need to bring her back. But it was a lot of, do you have a lot of debt? Do you owe anybody money? Do you have a gambling problem? Do you have a secret life? Are you cheating on your husband? Like all these crazy things. And I'm just like, finally I go, why are you asking me this stuff? These are like so bizarre. What does this have to do with bringing Charlotte home? And they're like, and I started to get annoyed because this was like a very long process. So I'm like, why are you not out looking for Charlotte? Why are you asking me about my shoe size? You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here?
This went on for about 7 hours.
Then he's like, I'm going to show you something. So I said, okay. And he lays the ransom note out. They didn't want me to tell you and Jené over here, and then Jené go tell the news, and the news says, oh, it's a black truck, and then whoever had Charlotte could panic and leave.
Panic.
Of course.
It could really screw up everything.
A ransom note, which meant Charlotte was probably still alive. And the police don't want anyone outside of Trisha and Dave to know about the note or the black truck it arrived in. But it was enough to give Trisha something that finally looked like a bit of hope.
So we get back, and there were so many people at the camp background, like family came from literally all over the state. Everybody was there, which I loved to see them from a distance, but like I didn't want to talk to anybody. It was kind of like, thanks for coming, but don't talk. I'm not going to talk to you. I just kind of like hid away from everybody, really. But
at one point, you were like, "Please tell everybody to stop touching me." One more person comes over and touches me, and I was like, "Okay, no
because
problem. I'll
people
go over and
were
tell
like
them."
rubbing my back,
Right.
and
She
I
was
was like,
"Enough.
I can't be touched anymore by anybody. I love everybody, but stop touching me."
Right,
so anyhow, we got back. There's a ton of people, and I just started to feel different. I don't know how to explain it, but just I felt lighter is like a good way to explain it. It's such a terrible feeling, and like something just shifted. I didn't feel so heavy, and like I felt like not that I could breathe, but just like it wasn't like quicksand type of feeling where like no matter where I went, I was just like suffocating and sinking. And I was standing with Jené and my dad and I think my sister-in-law, and there were a couple other people, my other sister-in-law, a couple of people standing there, and I was just like, I just feel different today. I feel like today's the day that she's gonna come home.
A little later, just as Jené was finally getting Trisha to eat something, a baked potato, the state trooper shows up.
So if he like came in there at 100 miles an hour.
Yes.
And you like at first, like your heart just stops because you don't know why they're speeding in there.
Right.
Is he going to say something good or is he not going to say something good? And again, we're from a small area. So the cop actually knew David and Patrick.
Yes,
they
he
grew
was a
up together,
childhood
childhood friends. So he gets out of his car and he's screaming, Dave, Dave. And I'm like, what's wrong? Why is he only calling for Dave? And then he yells, they found her.
Yes.
And she's okay.
She's alive.
She's alive.
Yes.
She's okay. And he's just screaming this. He's screaming, they found her. They found her. She's alive. She's okay. And
No details. They're not telling us. We just wanted to hear one thing.
We just wanted to thank you guys.
Yes, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Give her our best. We'll try to keep the noise down.
You guys can be as loud as you want to be.
Make it louder.
Take care, guys.
We're all like screaming. I literally fell to my knees. The baked potato went flying through the air. That's why I always say to Trisha, I'll never forget the baked potato because I'm like in the middle of making it for her. And then I just threw the potato.
it was,
we're all screaming.
everybody
and saying,
was screaming.
Thank God. I mean, it was like, I can't even.
The ransom note, it turned out, had a fingerprint on it. An initial attempt to find a match turned up nothing. They processed it again, and this time, a match to a 1999 DWI arrest. At 6:32 p.m., roughly 47 hours after a man took Charlotte from her family in broad daylight, police rescued her from inside a cabinet in the man's camper behind his mother's home. The police rushed Trisha and Dave to the local hospital to reunite with their daughter.
He's like, get in the car. And my husband's a big guy and he opens up the door, he's getting in, and I'm literally shoving, like he's trying to get in and I'm practically like feet and all hands, like get in the car. And, I literally thought I was having a heart attack, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm finally getting my daughter back and I'm going to die in the back of a cop car because my heart was beating so hard. I couldn't breathe. Like my arms were tingling because it's like this surge of like electricity went through my body, and they opened doors and she was laying in the hospital bed, and like just her sweet little face was poking out. And I remember thinking like, she's okay. Like she looked okay. She looked, because you don't know what to expect. You know what I mean? And she just looked like my sweet little girl, but like all I could see was this because I like had so many blankets and whatnot on her. And as soon as she saw Dave and I, she started crying and she said, I want my mom, I want my dad. And they took her out and she just hugged us and cried.
The family started to learn more details, like just how devastatingly nearby Charlotte had been all along.
This is like it's a hard part of the story to talk about because she was so close to my family. Like she was a minute from my brother's house. She was 2 minutes from my dad's house. She was 3 minutes from my sister. So like when I think about it, it's just, a lot of emotions because she was so close.
And how Charlotte had done her best to outsmart him.
He's such a dirtbag. He, first of all, he waited. Like he saw the kids riding bikes and he passed them, which was confirmed. One of the kids saw him drive by. They just didn't know until they saw his face on the news because he's very scary and he's just very scary looking. So obviously when the girl looked up and saw him and then saw him again, she's like, I saw him. He drove by us in the park. And then he went around, he saw the kids. He went around one more time and parked. So he was waiting for the kids. It just happened to be that Charlotte went by herself. So we had like no information to go off of. I don't know if his plan was to take them all, take one, take two, but his plan was to take one of our children. And he sat there and waited. And then when Charlotte drove by, he had on her bike, he said, can you help me get something out of the back of my car? And Charlotte had said, you're an adult. I think you can do it yourself. Because we have always said, like, adults don't ask you for help. Adults ask adults. Yeah. Adults don't ask children. Right. So she had said, I think you can, you're an adult. I think you can get it yourself. And he said, my hands are too big and I can't get it. It went under my back seat. So he took advantage of a nice kid because she said, oh, okay, and got off her bike and leaned in and he threw her in the back of his truck and told her to lay the F down. And she did. And then he drove by our campsite and left the park with my daughter. And we've had a lot of conversations with her and, well, all three of my kids that nobody did anything wrong except for him. Absolutely. He is the only one that did anything wrong. You should be able to ride your bikes.
She did what she had to do to stay alive the entire time. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember her, like, he would tell her certain times, like, don't make any noise. If he was, like, leaving or something, then he would leave and she would scream her head off. She was like, I'm gonna get through this.
9 years old. Just 9 years old, with more grit and perseverance than a child should ever need.
When we got her home, I was sitting in the rocking chair and she was on a love seat next to me. And she had only been home just a couple hours at that point, a few hours. And she was sitting there just kind of, zoning out. And I said, you doing all right, Bug? Which I know is like a silly thing to say, but it's like, it's so natural to like say to your kids. So she's like, you doing all right, Bug? And she had her elbows on her knees and her hands under her chin. And she just kind of looks over at me and she said, I just decided that I'm not going to let this ruin my life. I'm over it. Just cool as a cucumber, just looks at me and just it's like she just made a decision in that moment that this is something that happened to me, but it's not going to be what defines me. And that just like really stuck with me. And I think about that sometimes, like when I'm having a bad day or a hard day, or like even doing something like this, which is out of my comfort zone, that like if my 9-year-old can have something so traumatic happen to her and just make a conscious decision that like, yes, it happened, but it's not going to define me. And, you know, she really works at that every day. Like she doesn't have great days sometimes, but I will say she tries every day. She tries to have good days. So that really stuck with me when she came home.
It turned out that the hours of questioning Trisha and Dave had gone through was to start building an ironclad case against the perpetrator. Ultimately, though, it's because of Charlotte's tenacity that he was convicted and sentenced to 47 years and will not be eligible for parole until his 90s.
My 9-year-old daughter was able to, they rescued her, and on the way from where she was found to Albany Med, she told her story. And then when she was at Albany Med, she again told her story to the medical professionals that were talking to her. And she was able to talk to the DA and again talk about what happened to her in so much detail that there was no way he was getting out of it. Very, very small, detailed pieces that like only she would know about where something was placed inside the camper. You're going to find that in this place. It's in this color bag, like things of that nature. So because she remembered this stuff. Now, when I say this, it's she was able to remember this stuff to put him away, but she also is now stuck with these memories, you know, that she now has to work through. But in doing so, she was the one who put him in jail. Like she put him away. She wrote a remarkable impact statement that our DA was able to read to him. That was really powerful, in my opinion.
You will crumble, and I will be standing tall, she writes in it. And she signs it with no fear.
Does she feel proud of herself?
She does. She does feel proud of herself. She knows that what she did was
Brave,
and she knows it was very hard. But I think, you know, some days are hard for her and she wants to talk through them, and then other days she's just like, it happened, I'm moving on. You know, it's just, but I think that's like pretty typical. You know, I feel the same way, but I make it a point to tell her that, you know, she has, not only did she do something like super brave by telling her story, which is in itself just very difficult to have to talk about those kinds of things as an adult, let alone a child, but she did it.
I want to point out that Trisha is only here with express permission from Charlotte.
She knows I'm here right now. I don't do anything without talking to her first. I feel like it's really important. She had a lot of big choices taken from her, and I will just never contribute to that. So I ask her everything. What do you think about this? Aunt Jené and I are going to do a podcast. What do you think? And she said, I hope it helps a lot of people. I think that's really great. And, you know, when I asked about using her name, because I don't like using her name again without her permission, and she said, you know, why? And I explained to her, like, you know, part of our goal is really, I don't want Charlotte's name to be associated with his picture.
It's not just about Charlotte, Part of the family's healing is their mission to create meaningful change for all child survivors. That includes asking the media not to put the survivor's picture next to the captors in stories and not reporting on specific charges.
The media piece is one piece of it, and, the sensitivity of the media. And then the other piece of it is when this type of crime happens and the survivor is now dealing with court proceedings.
The people around Charlotte, her team, were excellent. She had ADA, Jennifer Buckley. She was so sensitive to Charlotte.
Very invested in her. So, we were very fortunate. And I'm not saying that others are not like her. I can just say that, she was very sensitive and, talked me through everything and explained how things were working, answered all my questions, even if I asked them 15,000 times. But a lot of it I just noticed was yeah, I can file that. Yeah, I can file that. And it's what do you mean? Why is this even a thing that we're filling out of paperwork? One of our points is making it automatic. So when it becomes a sex crime for a minor under 12 or 13 years old or whatever it is, that the case automatically gets sealed. Because we had this lag time with our case.
Right.
And it was so high profile that journalists were able to put in for the information and getting the information on what happened to her. Everybody wanted to know what happened, which I understand the curiosity, but it's not when it's your child. Trisha keeps saying, how would you feel if it's your child? So this would make it automatic. So some of these things are little things that you would say, I can't believe that's not already being done. She showed up for a deposition and all of a sudden there was this strange man there that she had never seen before, and she's supposed to tell him her story, which she had to share 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. It's a lot of really common sense stuff. A child should never have to go into a courtroom and testify with the person that harmed them in the room.
Right,
so
doing
two-way camera set up in a way that they don't have to see the person. And then the other big one is to have an advocate for these types of situations. We had a family advocate that was our liaison between the police and our family. But I feel that these children need to have somebody that's I call it their security blanket. This is so big and so scary and so difficult. It's already been traumatizing enough. And it's we're just going to keep needling them with one more thing that is going to be imprinted on their brain of a terrible experience. And then not only did I go through this experience, but I talk about it again and again and again and again. And it's we need to have somebody in there with them that can hold their hand and tell them it's okay and that they're doing a great job. We got to start protecting our kids. Not we need to protect them on the front end, but after the fact, we can't undo what was done. So we need to do the best we can to make them feel safe during this process.
Get this. They put it all into a bill. The Child Survivor Privacy Act. And less than a year after Charlotte's courageous survival, it's already being introduced in the New York State Legislature. Trisha and Jené also spread awareness through their podcast, Sisterhood of the Survivors, an idea that started after a speaking engagement fell through.
And Trisha was kind of I'm a little disappointed in that because I feel really motivated now to really raise awareness. And just out of the blue, I was we should do a podcast. So I'm I text Trisha and I'm should we do a podcast? And she's yes, without even like absolutely. And so that's when we were well, we don't need someone to give us a platform to speak.
Right.
And Trisha goes, well, we'll make our own platform. And it's super easy to do. So we got the idea together, and basically it started out as like us just letting people in on our conversations that we've been having for 8 months. Like, we talk every single day, probably all day at different times during the day. So we start talking about all this stuff.
And part of like doing this podcast too is there's such a stigma of like, don't talk about this. Don't,
right.
What, it was your fault. What did you do? Like, and it's really like, we need to change that because we are teaching our children that there's something wrong with them.
Or she has something to be ashamed
or
of.
That, right.
And she doesn't.
Of course not.
And that's really important to both of us. This is not a Charlotte problem. You know what I mean? we've heard with our friends and even just people that have reached out to us and said, this happened to me. I was told not to say anything. This happened to me. My mom didn't believe me. Like, but
We've
it's
gotten
just
so
like
many letters like that, which is like.
But these
so
people
sad.
grow up to be adults that feel like they did something wrong when in return they were an innocent child. Like, we really need to flip that script of like, this happened to me and I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to hold people accountable. That's the only way things are going to change, is if we have these really hard, uncomfortable conversations. Like, this is uncomfortable for me, but I believe that something good is going to come out at the end.
From where I sit, they've already accomplished a ton of good, which brings us to one of their biggest, most impactful efforts, carving the path for Charlotte to own her story.
When we did our impact statement, I looked at all of them when I read mine, and I had said, you know, can I speak to the media? And I looked all of them in their eye because I was so dead serious about this. Like, I hated that they kept calling her a victim. And I had said, please stop doing that. Like, she is a survivor. She is here. She works hard every day to be a survivor. Yes. Give her the respect and call her as she is. Yeah. Stop calling her a victim. It was so disheartening and hard for me to like have her name associated with that word. And now I like, you can look up, call her a survivor. And I love that because that's Charlotte. It's call her a survivor. Beautiful. So it's just little things that will hopefully someday paint this big, beautiful picture for her of things that, you know, we're trying to do for her. So when she grows up, she can be proud.
And Charlotte makes Trisha proud every single day.
Oh, I'll tell you, she like surprises me every day, like in a really great way. So 4th grade, they do a play. Everybody does it. It's like, you know, moving up, you're going to do the play. It's like a real big deal. You either do set, you act, whatever. And she was like, I'm not doing that. She's shoulder, the hand, like she's a vibe, this one. But she was like, I'm not doing it. And then halfway through the meeting, she's like, never mind. I'm gonna try out for the lead. So I was like, okay, I think this is great. She did the play. She did so well. She curtsied after every scene.
What role was she? What play was it?
It was Winnie the Pooh, and she played Kanga. Oh yeah,
That's a big role.
She was so darn cute. But the curtsy was like, again, it's so out of character for her because she's like the don't look at me kid, you know what I mean? And she just curtsied and she was super proud of herself. But I think this experience has shown her also that she can do hard things and she can step out of her comfort zone and try new things, and she may end up really loving them. And regarding the play, she's actually doing a play this summer. She joined like a little theater camp with her big sister, and she's doing that this summer. So she's, you know, really branching out and putting herself out there and trying new things, and just, you know, she's just being a kid.
What a beautiful illustration of gratitude. She came out the other side just being like, you know what? I'm going to make the most of this life.
I'm going to do
here.
this.
Let's do it.
Trisha and Jené, thank you so much for being here. I know it wasn't easy. And a huge thank you to Charlotte. Charlotte is a survivor, and she's many other things too. I want to close by sharing how Trisha described Charlotte in the impact statement she read at sentencing. She loves to sing, but she hates dancing. She loves snakes and all wildlife, but she's afraid of ladybugs. She loves Pokemon and cats. She loves deeply and is never afraid to apologize. She is kind and cares about everyone around her, whether they are a family member, a friend, or someone she just met. She is incredibly smart. Her kindergarten teacher called her a big thinker because she couldn't take anything at face value. She needed to know the how and the why. That's all for today. Remember, if you like what you heard, if it impacted you in any way, and if you think it's a message other people in your life might like to hear, I'd be so grateful if you'd give me 5 stars, leave a quick little comment. Those things really help. And share this podcast with your friends, either on social media or just word of mouth. I'm on a mission for us all to help each other focus on expanding our attention towards what's good in the world rather than focusing on what's bad, one person at a time. If we all did that, even to our own little sphere of influence, the world has the potential to be a much more radically awesome place. Stick with me, friends. I've got your back. We're in this together, and it's a great day to see the greatness in the day. See you next time. The Gratitudeology Podcast is written, executive produced, and hosted by me, Jamie Hess. Sound design and studio production by Gotham Production Studios. Our theme song is Maze by HYLLS, sung by Nadia Ali. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Gratitudeology.
I'll be right